the ITGS committee meeting. Mr. Blumenfeld is with us, and Ms. Rodriguez just came in. We have a quorum. Mr. City Attorney, I understand you have instruction to make, please.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As our first meeting of 2019 begins for this committee, I'd like to take a moment to remind everyone that some new council and committee rules have come into effect. The new rules state that a member of the audience who disrupts multiple council or committee meetings may be excluded from future meetings for 1 or more days. The number of days increases with the number of disruptions. The exact rules are available on the city's website, and a summary of the rules are available on a large poster board in the back of the room. I'd like to make clear that the new rules do not address the content of public speakers' remarks. Instead, the rules are designed to prevent repeated actual disruptions of council and committee meetings. Our hope is that the new rules will help the council and committee meetings run more efficiently to complete the city's business and to allow as many members of the public as possible to present their comments to their elected representatives in an orderly manner. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to say that.
Thank you very much. So that'll be instructions for the public. We have one speaker card, Patricia McAllister. You wish to speak on items 1, 3, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Give me 1 second, Mr.
Sure.
Chair.
I get, what, 3 minutes?
One time out. Yes.
I'm sorry.
You're going to combine 3 minutes or 2 and 1? 2 and 1?
2 and 1.
2 and 1.
That way we can separate general public comment.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm glad to be,
Sorry, I apologize.
okay, I'm glad to be here. I'm a technology person, degree in computer science, Chicago State University, cum laude. Owned a technology company for 12 years. Now, here I see you want to take the surplus city database and move those properties to other departments and leasing and selling. We need to be taking those properties and making affordable housing. Leasing, you're still talking about money, making money. I don't know if you walk down the street, you probably drive right out of this building, hit the freeway, but we have people laying everywhere all over the sidewalks. They would lay in the street if they could do it. So that's what I like to see. And I also see in here where you're taking IT, the IT budget. IT belongs in IT. I was in one of the meetings and they want to take the police's money, so out of their budget, for their computers. IT is IT. They almost have $1 billion in that budget. So I don't like the fact that you guys keep putting IT separate, other people's technology problems separate from the IT department. That's why we get a lot of money that comes up missing by doing that. Now, number 5, you want instruct the attorney to give Cedilio another office on 6th Street. Listen, I don't know if you drive down 6th Street, but I do. It looks like a slum over there. All these stolen goods all over the street. They're beating up each other for stealing from one another. It's a mess over there. I don't think he needs another office. We need to get those people off the street and out of this country, because most of them, they're not on the street sleeping. They're selling goods. They have affordable. They're living in the affordable housing. And I would like to see these social service agencies in the black community so the blacks can get this housing. Over in the Crenshaw district, they don't have one over in that area. And one other thing here, again, we want to, this surplus property deal, that should be housing. It shouldn't be leasing to anyone to make money. We need to be converting to housing. I don't see you doing that. I see you building shelters. And you know what they're doing with shelters. They're taking the people's SSI checks and welfare checks. That's what these Jews are doing. So I know what's going on. Now, my 1 minute comment.
Wait 1 second. Is there anyone who wants to speak on any item on the agenda today other than that? All right, Ms. McAllister, then you can have your 1 minute public comment.
My 1 minute comment is I'd like for this department to do something about your information technology. Like I said, I'm a computer scientist. When I go to your website, it's a shame. I don't see the meetings there that should be there. For instance, this meeting here, if I want to go online a month from now and listen to what's going on in this meeting, I should be able to do that. It's not online, especially for that budget committee. I believe they're hiding theirs intentionally. And then they come into the meetings during the week and say, oh, we covered that. Well, I like to verify it. I like to go in there because I can't make every meeting. I like to go into that website and listen to that meeting to make sure you verify it that you talked about it. Because if you didn't talk about it, I should be able to speak about it. And I think it's one way to keep us from speaking by saying you talked about it when you haven't really. And when I go on that website, I want to see some substance on there. I see all kind of bugs, things are missing. You're paying too much money. They have $1 billion in a budget, and I'm a computer scientist, and I'm ashamed to go on the city's website. It's just that bad. So we need to get those illegal aliens off the payroll in the IT department and put Americans, because we built this system in this nation. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment. With consent of the committee, we'll take items 3, 5, 6, and 7 as consent. That's concurred. Okay, I'll call item number 1.
Item number 1, Municipal Facilities Committee, report relative to directing the city administrative officer to collaborate with the Department of General Services to reduce the number of properties marked as surplus in the city's database and related matters.
Afternoon.
Oh, good afternoon. My name is Blair Miller. I work with the CAO's Asset Management Group. This report addresses the city's analysis of a list of 428 surplus properties that were provided to our group from the Department of General Services in early 2017. This list was analyzed as part of our effort to fulfill Strategy 7D of the Comprehensive Homeless Strategy, which is to use city property for affordable and homeless housing. And so at the start, we were looking at every single property to see if it was possible to build affordable housing on that site, also shelter. And we're also looking at other homeless services such as storage, safe parking, or navigation. Unfortunately, the vast majority of the sites were unavailable for this type of effort. Most of them are either too small, too steep, or in use for other purposes. And because this surplus list was not a good source of sites for housing or shelter, we're also in the process of reviewing over 300 additional properties, including properties controlled by other city departments, owned by public agencies, and privately owned sites, and we will report on that effort at a future date. Are there any questions on the report?
Ms. Rodriguez?
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I noticed among some of the recommendations, what was included was a transfer of properties to other city departments.
Correct.
What is that process, and have those departments been notified, and are they interested in actually being the recipient of those surplus?
These are good questions. So we have actually begun the process of working with GSD and planning our strategy, because there's obviously a lot of sort of different avenues that the work needs to take coming out of this report. Our office, Yolanda Chavez is our ACAO, and she will be taking the lead in reaching out to the general managers of the affected departments to talk about what process they would like to use to review whether or not they want to take these on. A large percentage of them would be rec and parks, and the reason they were recommended is because they're effectively already in use for parkland.
Oh.
So the idea is that GSD is now responsible for maintaining these properties, and that where it makes sense, they should be moved off of GSD's roles and onto the department that should be using them. In some cases, they're actually being used as parking lots, so they should go to DOT, et cetera.
So, for example, in my district, we took one of our surplus properties, and we just finished executing a master agreement for the Adopt-A-Lot program, and we're going to create, so is that then going to be proposed for transfer, or is that going to remain within GSD?
Adopt-A-Lot is one of the few that we're recommending actually does remain within GSD.
Okay.
Correct.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Bonville? No. So, being the new guy here, I'm the rookie. My understanding is this is a report back coming from a previous instructions by the council where you've narrowed the focus more. And then the next step after this, after we approve this to council, will be to bring back a final report at a later date.
I believe there will be subsequent reports. There may be multiple subsequent reports because we kind of have a lot of things that are going on with asset management. So again, it'll be, the report may come in the form of proposed actions to council to say, create a new own a piece of LA program. That is one work product that might come out of this, is kind of an entirely new program that maybe expands it, because we have some sites that might be appropriate but weren't included in the original OPLA requirements, or coming back with our specific recommendations. So there might be multiple reports, yes.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? Seeing none, move forward to council then with approval. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 2.
Item number 2, MFC, CAO, and GSD reports and ordinance relative to authorizing the GSD to sell the surplus city-owned property located at 1001 East 1st Street to the Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority, Metro.
Good. Ms. Miller again.
Oh, good afternoon again. Blair Miller, Asset Management Group of the CAO. This report is regarding James K. Hill and Sons Pickleworks building, known as Pickleworks. The original two-story brick structure was built in 1888 and purchased by the city in 2007 using state and federal bridge program funds in order to allow for the completion of the First Street Viaduct and street widening project. In 2008, the south bay of the property was demolished for that purpose, and a covenant was placed on the property requiring the rebuilding of the south facade. So the property was declared surplus by council in August, and notification was sent to the agencies. Metro was the only one to respond, and they intend to use the site to expand their rail yard. This expansion will benefit Metro customers because it's going to make service better, improve service on the red and purple lines, and improve service times at Union Station. So the original plan was that Metro was going to expand the yard by demolishing a different piece of the building, but then they were going to both rebuild the south facade as required and also make the building useful. It's a historic property, but it had been unused for a long time because of structural issues. Unfortunately, there was a fire on November 9th of 2018, and the building was basically destroyed. And so demo and removal of the remainder of the building has been determined to be essential. There is a new appraisal, because originally the appraisal was based on the property where they would have had this obligation to rebuild, and now the site is being sold to them effectively clear. And so the sales price has been set at $11,900,000. A condition of that original funding for the bridge program was that any proceeds of the sale of the property be distributed 88.53% to Caltrans and 11.47% to the city. So the city's share of this sale is $1.3 million, and these funds will be used to pay for the demolition, which is estimated at about $650,000. The remainder of the funds will go to be returned to Proposition A.
Mr. Blumenfeld, you had requested this?
Just a quick question. So did we spend a lot of money since purchasing it in 2007 on maintenance?
There have been funds spent on maintenance, and I don't have that figure off the top of my head.
And on some of these other costs? I was just curious if some of those costs could be used to offset how much we pay back to Caltrans.
I have read all of the materials relative to this, and my understanding from my reading is no, but I'm not an attorney. So I could ask the city attorney to confirm.
Yeah, that just jumped out at me as saying, like, hey, maybe if we could offset that, that's, another $500,000 more dollars we might be able to get. Well, I don't need an answer right now to move this forward. I just want to make sure we're looking under every rock for money that we could get.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Mr. Rodriguez, no? So we'll move to council and be prepared then to answer that question on the floor.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank
Or
you.
you can just let me know.
Or let him,
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 4.
Item number 4, MFC report relative to authorizing the Bureau of Engineering to initiate the next phase of the Yards and Shops Master Plan study to assess the city's existing yards and shops facilities within geographic clusters and initiate the next phase in the South Los Angeles and Civic Center regions. Also, this item has been referred to the Public Works and Gang Reduction Committee.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Lisa Johnson-Smith from the CAO. The city operates over 133 yards and shops facilities that are approximately 30 to 50 years old. The facilities require significant capital investment and have deferred maintenance requirement and needs. In 2012-13, the mayor and council provided $500,000 for a citywide master plan study. In 2016, Bureau of Engineering initiated the Phase 1 consultant study and spent $50,000 to develop the scope of the master plan study. In 2017, the CAO initiated a Phase 2 survey utilizing 2 teams of interns to collect additional information due to the lack of funding to proceed with the study. The funding to perform the full Phase 2 scope of work was estimated at $5.8 million. Due to limited funding, we recommend scaling down the scope of the study to a more focused level in order to make the most prudent use of the available funds. The major findings from Phase 2 surveys include inadequate space and expansion needs, update service area boundaries and potential relocation of functions, capital repairs and infrastructure needs, inadequate parking, and efficiency measures and revenue opportunities. The preliminary results and recommended actions are reflected in Section C of this report and in the attachment. On December 20th, 2018, the Municipal Facilities Committee adopted and amended the CAO report and provided staff instructions to seek cost recovery from eligible special fund sources. The Yards and Shops Master Study would be a phased implementation to assess the city's existing yards and shops facilities within geographical clusters. If approved, BOE would initiate the next phase to occur within South Los Angeles and Civic Center regions. The consultant's scope of work would validate the areas of concern identified by various operating departments through the Phase 2 surveys. The report also recommends deferring consideration for repurposing the city's existing yards and shops facilities so that such consideration can be informed by the results of the master plan study. As far as fundings, there's no additional impact on the general fund in the current year. At this point, the total cost, estimated cost for the study is $817,000, which includes an 18% contingency allowance. BOE has basically costed out, saying the minimum cost per yard would be approximately $10,000 to do the review by the consultant. Out of the 133 facilities, we're recommending moving forward with 69 facilities, which is approximately 50%, and that's based on the funding available. Of the $500,000 that was allocated earlier, we have $412,000 available. $50,000 have been spent on the development of the scope of the master study, and $38,000 was spent on a separate feasibility analysis. So in combination with the $412,000 that we have available funding, we received approval to repurpose $405,000 in prior year capital improvement expenditure program funds that had been budgeted for Yards and Shops capital repair program. And so that combined together makes the $817,000 current budget. We are also going to recommend through the budget process additional funding for next year to continue and do the balance of the remaining yards. So we're looking at approaching the areas with the highest need, which from the South LA region, CD 8, 9, and 10, BOE reviewed the local demographics to identify communities that are in most need. These community districts have the city's lowest medium income household, and they also promote economy of scale due to the contiguous location of these communities. We've identified 16 facilities in that location, so that would cost about approximately $160,000. The second area we're looking to focus on is the Civic Center and the surrounding communities within a 3 to 7 mile radius. We recommend that based on unique features and opportunities to promote economic development and achieve other significant returns on the proposed investments in the facilities located within that region. If we don't have enough money that's the 53 facilities that we've identified. If we don't have enough money in this first initial phase, we would look at lowering the radius from 7 miles to something smaller. The additional funds that we're requesting through the budget would pay for any shortfalls for Phase 1 as well as moving forward with Phase 2. There are approximately 8 city departments that are operating in the 133 yards: sanitation, street lighting, street services, general services, transportation, fire department, recreation and parks, and the police department. The various functions that they operate are vehicle and equipment maintenance and repair, vehicle fueling and wash stations, vehicle and equipment storage, trade and fabrication shops, warehouse space, administrative training space, and asphalt plants. If you have any questions, I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Thank you for that report. I'm really excited about this, actually, because we're talking about many of the folks in our city family that are on the front lines every day doing that day-to-day work that we are dependent upon. And I visited many of these yards, and they are in very much disrepair and need some adequate facility improvements. As it relates to some of the sanitation yards specifically, and I had a question about whether or not, we know that the service boundaries haven't been amended. As it relates to some of the amendments that we had put forward through, for example, Recicla LA, and some of what those parameters were geographically, the service areas, have we encouraged sanitation at any point to really reevaluate what their service territories are so that they would reflect some of the same service kind of first-in boundaries for, that are created through the Recicla program, so that we're at least aligned with that and not working at odds.
So to answer your question, I don't have the answer to that. I do know that sanitation is making significant investments within their own yards and shops because they have special funds and they're able to do investments, and they have their own plan. I don't have all the details of the plan, and but we can find that out for you and get them to respond back to you on how they're looking at their service areas, how they're making adjustments.
Thank you.
Ms. Phil.
Thanks. Yeah, I think this is great that we're doing this, and there's a lot of efficiencies that can be had for our departments. And I also think back years ago when Rita Walters was council member here. I worked for the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, and she wanted to have a park in her district and complained to the Conservancy that we didn't build one. And so I went in a helicopter with her and Joe Edmonston, and we flew over her district, and we saw a DWP yard that had these beautiful oak tree and an avocado tree in the middle of it. And Joe Edmonston, being the way he was, he pointed down and said, "We're going to put a park there." And we did. And we built something that's now called the Augustus Hawkins Park. It's on the corner of Compton and Slauson, and then eventually gave that park to the city using dirt from the Santa Monica Mountains, et cetera. So I guess I tell that story because not only is this have potential for us in terms of consolidating and creating efficiencies, but if we can identify underutilized yards, that could also have tremendous benefit for homeless initiatives, for parks in particular, and for partnerships. And I'm not sure how we're going about, once we identify the underutilized ones, how are we going about looking to some of our partners, be they the Conservancy, be they homeless housing advocates or whomever, to make sure that we're taking that next step and using the park most efficiently. So I guess the first question is, how do we get to that second phase?
I think once we receive the results from the yards and shop study and we've identified places where we have underutilization, we would work through the departments as well as through the community partners to try to get some synergies there. I think that would be initiated. Our office would work with the departments, and then the departments would bring staff on and we would reach out. So I think that's something definitely that we could do with the consultant.
Great. Yeah, I'd like to see that. And then are there other areas of the city that have a concentration of yards and facilities similar to this area? And are there any plans to expand the study beyond the area?
There are, and the study doesn't include the Valley, it doesn't include Harbor, it doesn't include West Los Angeles, only because we just have limited resources. And at the time when we first decided on the master scope study, it was $5.8 million to do the full study. What we're trying to do is we've tried over the years to take some of the work in-house, and we had our team of CAO analysts review and reach out to the departments and go through the surveys, and therefore reducing some of the work that the consultant would have to do. So now what we want the consultant to do is come in to revalidate that information, but because of limited funding, we had to focus on areas that we think would be the most need as well the most beneficial, which is the Civic Center for most beneficial because all the development going on in the Civic Center, and South LA because of the most need. If we receive additional funding through the budget process, then we can expand that scope and then do the rest of the yards. And then we can move forward with looking for synergies and getting other work done.
Right, and trying to apply best practices and all the rest. But it makes sense to start there. Most yards are there as well. So. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Seeing no further questions, we'll move that to council. Thank you very much. And last item, number 8.
Item number 8, Information Technology Agency report relative to ITA's review and conditional approval of the Regents of the University of California, University of California at Los Angeles application for the city's grant of a private line telecommunications franchise.
Excellent. Good afternoon, Ted Ross, General Manager with the Information Technology Agency. I'm joined by William Imperial, also with the Information Technology Agency. As you know, the ITA helps administer the private light franchises at the City of LA. So I'm going to ask William to provide just a quick background and to be available for any questions.
Thank you, and welcome back, Councilmember Smith
Thank you.
and Council members. William Phil Rodriguez. Good afternoon. William Imperial, Telecommunications Regulatory Officer for the City of Los Angeles. I oversee the private line franchises that the city administrates. There are 21 that are active. right now, and there are 13 that are paying franchise fees pursuant to our franchise fee structure. The normal rate, if I may, if you need, I can tell you what a private line franchise is. It's just a connection between 2 points in the city of normally private facilities, nonprofits. Kaiser has one. Actually, they have 7 different lines that run along Sunset or across Sunset that consist of fiber in the ground and conduits that surround it. And what we do, because they're in the public rights of way, is we charge $5 a linear foot per 4-inch conduit, $2.50 a linear foot per aerial wiring that one of our museums is using right now up here on the hill. And also, we charge $15, that's the going rate, for vaults and manhole covers. These are all our portions or parts of a telecommunications facility in the public rights of way. So we received a application from UCLA, ITA did, and we reviewed it, and what's jumped out at us was that UCLA was asking for a complete waiver of all fees, including the application fee of $2,500. We said that we would hold off on charging them the $2,500. We would review it, and we would go through the process subject to your approval of what our recommendation would be and that we're providing to you today. There are 3 options that the council could take up. One is to grant UCLA's application request and charge no fees. The problem for us is that in 2013, after 3 or 4 years of negotiating with USC, we came up with a public benefit discount for them, whereby the city is charging half its going rate that I just enumerated to you. We essentially receive about $284,000 a year from USC in private line or franchise fees. And they also had to put up a $4.5 million performance bond as part of that franchise. That's a standard practice in regard to franchises anyway. So with regard to UCLA, that number 1 option is on the table for you to consider. The second option, which is the one that ITA is recommending, is the one I just mentioned that involves the USC platform or basis to go forward with imposing those obligations that we did with USC on UCLA. And of course, the third option is just to say no to their request period and impose the full franchise fee. These are not significant fees, I think, in the terms of what the city revenue is. The bottom line here is it's only going to be around $37,000 per year for UCLA. And it's going to be a robust private line telecom system that they're building out along Wilshire and other streets that surround the Westwood campus. And they have plans to go out into Sunset because they have other buildings that they're looking at in the Westwood area. So they want the ability to have a streamlined approval process, the same that we granted to USC, whereby instead of having to come and to ITA and request a new ordinance every time they want to build out their systems, they essentially send us a letter. We do a report to the council informing the council that there's going to be a further build out. And we tell the council how much the fee difference is going to be or the increase is going to be. And the council can act or not act. And we come to ITGS and we go to council with that same report. And it cuts the time period, by the way, by half. And so that's our recommendation to you today, is that you take option number 2. And that's what ITA is essentially recommending to the council, that we have the precedent set, and we're hoping that you'll agree with us.
Mr. Blumenfeld.
Thanks. And treating the Bruins and the Trojans, that has a lot of appeal to keep the peace. How many other universities in the city's boundaries have a private line franchise? Is
No.
there any other?
Yes, actually, I should say, universities or colleges. LA Trade Tech has 2. And they're not really robust private line franchises. They're essentially, at Trade Tech, it's just to control their camera systems into the parking lot. And up at LA City College, it's just a small line that runs into the difference between the buildings, I think.
Do we give them the public benefit discount?
No, we did not.
I mean, we probably should be consistent if
Right.
we do this. I know it's not a lot of money in the scheme, especially those other ones, but just as a consistent matter, if we're going to give universities, I'd like that to be our policy.
We'll do that in the future.
And then, is it possible, the other way to handle it, I'm always trying to advocate for free Wi-Fi. Is it possible to add public Wi-Fi along the route and use that as a bargaining chip?
Well, I think it would be possible, except that they have a homegrown internal system that they may not want to have access to or have the public have access to because of it's an educational institution. I don't think that they would agree, but I can ask if you'd like. I mean,
Always trying to insert that into the mix if that's possible. It's probably a long shot, but, you know, for this kind of money, if we were able to throw up some public Wi-Fi nodes instead of collecting a few $1,000s, I would like that for one. But, so those are the two, I mean, I'm happy to move forward on the item as presuming, but I would throw those as things to look at.
I might want to add that we do have a representative from CD5, Koretz's office, because that's where the UCLA campus is located, and they also have approved this option number 2, intermediate, with Councilmember Koretz and his staff.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? Ms. Rodriguez? Okay, we'll do item number 2.
Option 2. Option 2.
Option 2.
Option 2.
Check out the those other ideas.
I will check out the Wi-Fi.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, there being no further business before today's committee, that meeting is adjourned.
Mr. Chair, sorry, quick clarification. So all the discussion items were unanimously approved, just for the record keeping.
Yes.
Thank you. That clears the desk.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great job, Mr. Chair.